We just got started. We just got started, my friends. We're just going to pause for a second here. There's a bit of media here, so we want to say a few things so we can get our word out to the people who will be seeing this protest, we assume, on the news tonight and hopefully all around the world. Hopefully they'll be seeing it in Charlottesville. How do we explain this monument behind us? It was installed in 1933. It's from a fascist, Benito Mussolini. It heralds the fascist era. The leaders of this city, when the monument was installed, knew completely and exactly what this monument stood for, and they knew who they were getting it from. Because everyone in the world knew what fascism was, and they knew what the menace was. Because this is 1933. This is the year that Hitler came to power. Is the same year that this racist, fascist monument that has no business standing on any soil on this planet was put in this town by the elite of this city. It was put in this town by the elite of this city. And not only did they know exactly what it meant when they put it in, they knew that there was an anti-fascist and anti-racist movement in this country of Italians and many others who opposed Mussolini. Because in 1935, there was a massive demonstration here in downtown Chicago against the fascist invasion of Ethiopia. And there were Italian people, there were black people there were people from all communities who stood out against fascism. And you know what the city of Chicago did? The city of Chicago repressed that demonstration. That's the history of this monument. This is a thoroughly racist monument that Mayor Emanuel needs to take down immediately. Let me say this again. This is a thoroughly fascist monument, and if we need to go to Mayor Emanuel's house, and we'll go to Mayor Emanuel's house and do this picket line outside of his house too. This monument represents the same thing that the lynching of Laquan McDonald on the streets of Chicago represents. Yep. A lynching that Mayor Rahm Emanuel covered up. And when I say that he's already said it, he was asked if he was going to remove this monument, he's kind of like, basically no. Same thing. Not the same thing. Not the same thing at all, because Laquan is dead and he was lynched, but it does represent something similar. It represents the systematic racism that this city and this society is organized around.
No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA.
It's our friend Greg Greer from Freedom First International.
These monuments are not monuments of beauty, Mr. Trump. These are not beautiful things. These are signals of a America that is now gone. And we're going to make sure that it's gone. We will stand. We will continue standing together. The coalition here is only a few people, a few hundred people, but I guarantee you we have support of thousands around the country. And as you see these monuments around the country being destroyed, not only is it a monument being destroyed, but it's the racial hatred that has plagued our country for years and years, and we are happy to see it go.
No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA.
Now we're going to welcome up LaShawn, our good friend from Black Lives Matter Women of Faith, to say a few words.
This systemic racism that we are reminded of every time we walk down the street, when we see monuments like this, we are no longer going to sit silently and listen and watch and wait for something else to happen. What we're saying now, instead of Donald Trump trying to make America great again, he needs to work on making America equal. And we're talking about equality across the board. We have so many different cultures and diversity of people that are represented here. This is a sign. Every time we see a monument like this, this is a sign that they're giving us a slap in the face. And we are sick and tired of being slapped in the face, and now we're standing up to say no more. Every time we see one of this, we will say no more. No more. We are tired of being unequal. We're tired of being treated as less than, treated like animals, treated with disrespect. Every time we hear the president speak, he doesn't do anything but speak disrespect. So we're now saying we're not going to take it. Every monument that represents fascism and racism has to come down. Yep. Yeah. Every racist monument has to come down. Okay. That's why we'll say no to systematic racism, no to systematic poverty, no to systematic cultural diversity where they're trying to loop everybody into one group, and understand we're standing together as equals. We're standing together knowing that we represent one another, and we're standing next to our brother and sister. It does not matter what the color of our skin is. It doesn't matter what our ethnic or economic background is. We're saying no more hatred, no more racism, and no more reminder of white supremacy in America. We are sick and tired of being treated like this, and we will say no more.
Fascist monuments?
Shut it down!
Sexism?
Shut it down!
Racism?
Shut it down!
The whole damn system?
Shut it down!
So next I would like to introduce Candace from the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
We are here today to take a firm and uncompromising stand against white supremacy, fascism, and the reactionary ideologies represented by this statue and those like it across the country. We further demand the removal of this monument and the renaming of Balbo Avenue in honor of an actual hero, Ida B. Wells. When this pillar was erected in the 1930s as a gift from Benito Mussolini, the U.S. was mired in an economic crisis of capitalism with no end in sight, and with the looming threat of a world war. In this climate, open fascism was a popular sentiment within the U.S. Groups like the pro-Nazi German-American Bund had tens of thousands of members, and Klan terror was common and widespread. I say this because it's important to realize the intent of monuments like these. Like the Confederate monuments that went up all around the nation during the same period, they are not simply historical artifacts or reminders. We must realize the context in which they were placed to realize what they truly are. Victory monuments, intended to celebrate the triumphs of fascism and white supremacy at a time when such hateful ideologies were on the rise.
No Trump, no KKK, no Fascist USA.
Next I'm going to welcome up Vicky Cervantes from La Voz de los Abajo.
Like a lot of you all, in the last few weeks, I've seen things that shocked me, but did not surprise me. And that's a sad statement on things. I mean, it's good that we were all shocked, but it's not good that we weren't surprised. And that's because, as others have said, there's this fascist, white chauvinism, white superiority, and violence against communities of color and against the poor is an underpinning of our country. And I say our country because it is our country, all of our country. This country should not belong to people like Trump, not to the rich, not to people like Joe Arpaio in Arizona. This country should belong to all of us who work here, who sweat for this country, and who care about this country. So I just want to point out that another big campaign that the alt-right, the Nazis, and the Klan are running is against Latino immigrants, against the Central Americans, the Hondurans who are fleeing in the thousands across the border through Mexico. Why? Because the U.S. government supported a coup d'etat in 2009, because the U.S. government supported the fascist dictatorships all across Central America and Latin America, and because the U.S. government supports the fascist, undemocratic government of Mexico. In fact, it may fight with Enrique Peña in the press, but it is giving millions of dollars to help Mexico cut off immigration and arrest and disappear their own people. So all of that ties into what is on our agenda, what we need to be doing. And we need to do that by standing, not only standing up for each other, which is important, but by standing shoulder to shoulder and fighting together against all of this. Thank you.
Hey, hey, ho, ho! Fascist monuments have to go! Hey, hey, ho, ho! Fascist monuments have to go!
But we want to say another thing, is that we stand with Muslims here today. We stand with every single community that is under attack here today. And any community that's fighting back and defending itself, we will be there whenever we're needed.
Arab, Asian, and white, unite, unite, unite and fight the right.
Let me welcome up another of our friends, Andy with the Gay Liberation Network.
This is not just about free speech. On one side, free speech. On other side, the free speech. Those who know anything about the First Amendment know that you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater. You cannot incite violence. You cannot say, I am going to kill so-and-so. That is illegal. That is illegal.
That's right.
And by the same token, when you put a sheet over your head, when you give a Sieg Heil, when you threaten to murder whole groups of people, whether they're African Americans with your Klan sheet, or threatening to kill Jews and others with your Sieg Heils, you are not just giving your free speech. That is not free speech. That much said, I have no trust in the kind of government that will allow crap like this to be erected behind us to take care of the fascists when they do more than their free speech, when they're marching and Sieg Heiling and so forth. That's why demonstrations like this here today are so important. That's why we need to be in the streets, because whichever party is in power, we cannot count on them guaranteeing and protecting our civil rights. We live in the country that just 75 years ago carried out a mass imprisonment of Japanese Americans. We live in a country that has allowed mass pogroms against black people in state after state, not just the South. Not just the South, but here in the state of Illinois, the so-called land of Lincoln as well. So my message here today is simply that this is more than about symbols. This is more than about just free speech. This is about stopping racist terror and murder against people living in this country. And we cannot allow the fascists to hide behind polite symbols of free speech or alt-right. And those of you in the media who persist in using the marketing of our opponents, allowing them to be called polite terms like alt-right, you're being unwitting accomplices. So I've got a message to you. Stop using that damn term.
No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA.
Hey, how you doing? This is Brother Joe. We're at the Balbo Monument. It needs to be torn down. It represents fascism. It was given to Chicago by the fascist Italy. Balbo was in the Mussolini regime. And there's no Confederate monuments here in Chicago that I know about, but it's a fascist one that needs to be torn down immediately. So Rahm Emanuel, remove this statue now. Let's get a statue put in here for Heather that was killed, murdered in Charlottesville by Nazis. If we get millions of people in the street, we could drive out the Trump regime, and we can tear down this monument too.
Recently, the longshoremen in San Francisco, the dock workers, passed a resolution that they were going to walk off for a day if the Nazis had their demonstration in San Francisco. Do we need to have the labor movement more involved in this anti-fascist movement?
Yes, we need the labor movement to get behind this movement to stand against fascism. The Teamsters spoke out, made 2 statements against, this white supremacy and the fascism. So locals need to get on it. But what we need to do is put people in the street. The labor movement needs to make resolutions in all the different internationals and the different locals. But the labor movement needs to put boots on the ground. What we need is general strikes. We need the labor movement and union members and the labor officials and everyone coming together against fascism. Because at first they attacked the marginalized groups like immigrants or refugees. But right now they're passing anti-union laws all around the country. But what they'll do later on is actually physically attack union members in the street. We just had an incident at Buona Beef where these 2 guys thought they were some kind of gangsters. And they came out there and they put their hands on union members and sprayed them with water, and they were arrested at Buona Beef. So boycott Buona Beef in Chicago. And it's the next step is them getting even more violent. So we need to oppose this. We need to nip this in the bud. We need to drive fascism out of the United States. And the labor movement needs to be leading the movement, or at least be an active part of driving out fascism.
No